Welcome to the Pleasure Program. My name is Holly.
I'm Victoria.
We're two licensed therapists who specialize in sex therapy. We are going to react to a Reddit post about someone's sex life. Okay, Victoria, you have not heard this post yet, so we're just gonna dive right in and see your reaction. I do want to give a trigger warning that this post from Reddit does reference a sexual assault, so please know that and take care of yourself if you need to skip this particular video. The title of this video is Wanting Butt Stuff, but Can I Handle It? I'm a 28-year-old female, not a stranger to experimenting in the bedroom, and have done anally inclined activities before, including obviously having sex. Now you must be wondering, why can't you just do it then, you goof? You already did it. To keep it brief and less traumatic for myself and for all of you, I was sexually assaulted by an ex several times anally, with no lube and incredibly painful for weeks after each time. Was in the process of trying to escape the relationship at the time, as it wasn't easy sharing a kid with him. And though it's been a couple years since, have a restraining order and a new, actually sane partner, I want to experiment with anal again, but on my terms. But every time I try, it's very painful and miserable, and I feel bad for not being able to perform for my partner. He says it's okay, but I beat myself up about it. I don't know if this could be more of a mental block keeping from doing this, or if some real damage could have happened to me physically, and I wanted to ask. I'm afraid to see and ask a doctor about it because it's humiliating. I allowed myself to go through that. Meanwhile, I'm working with a therapist to try and help me through the PTSD. I'm sorry for rambling, but I'd really like to know any advice if anyone has for this. Thank you.
First gut reaction. This woman is a rock star, like absolute rock star, right? Like what a terrible situation to be found in and have to go through. And I hear a lot of self-blame and self-judgment, and I think that's really getting in the way of things. So I'm so happy to hear that she's working on her PTSD, right? Because I think the shame and self-blame is from this trauma. And I think, like, she stated that she didn't want to see a doctor because she was embarrassed that she was in this situation. Like, she was blaming herself.
Humiliated that she allowed herself to go
Or
through
she
this.
allowed, like it's her fault, right? And I feel like that's something that I definitely advocate for her to work on with her therapist, and like recognizing and working on that is not her fault. None of this is her fault. And like all these beautiful attributes about herself to be able to get out of something like that, I would recommend pausing, trying to have anal sex right now and really focusing on her relationship with herself, and working on that PTSD so that we can get rid of some of that shame so that she can see a doctor and see if there is a medical thing going on. And then if there's no medical thing going on, there's reassurance for her that can ease some of that anxiety. If it is anxiety and trauma, like tension in her body getting in the way, right, can ease some of that. And then also working on the trauma, that will also be somewhat eased so that she and her like lovely partner can start to slowly try to reintegrate some anal, but maybe not starting right away with like penetrative sex with anal, just like, using fingers and toys and that kind of thing and working up to it so it's not 0 to 100 after all of this.
I agree with all of that, Victoria. I think that my advice would be very similar to that. Wonderful that she's working with a therapist. I want to normalize for this woman that asking a doctor, if something's wrong with you, especially anally, is so vulnerable. It's so triggering for like somebody who hasn't been assaulted sexually. And so then you add the trauma on top of that. I just want to normalize how triggering pelvic exams can be, an anal exam can be, like going to the doctor and knowing that you're going to be poked and prodded and looked at and under a magnifying glass is very triggering for a lot of people that have experienced trauma. So I had some thoughts on how she might be able to first She's working on the psychological trauma, which we can get to
Yep.
in a second here, but she wants to make sure something's not wrong with her physically, which is valid.
Yeah.
And because the skin and the tissue in your anus is very fragile and can tear easily, and there very well could have been some injury with some sort of residual effect maybe happening for her. So we're not medical doctors, so you would want to get yourself looked at. And so a couple of thoughts might be maybe starting with an OBGYN office if she has one, and calling and asking if anyone there is even like sane, certified or trained, which those are nurses or medical staff that have gone through training on doing an examination following a sexual assault. Now, of course, the sexual assault she's referencing happened years ago, so it wouldn't be an exam that you would do sort of in the immediate aftermath, but those medical staff have some training and awareness on how to interact with somebody who has been assaulted, and maybe how to approach doing an exam in a way that minimizes just how triggering it can be. So that might be a question she could ask first. And if that's even too scary, maybe having a friend call the office
That's a
and
great
say,
idea.
hey, just looking to see if any of your staff are trained here. I'm calling on behalf of a friend who would need some additional support to come in and ask some questions. So I think just bringing in some support might help her. And if it's really triggering, I wonder if there might be some medication they could offer her, like in just the immediate, like something to reduce some anxiety, to help her through all of that, and get herself looked at, get herself checked out, and make sure that she's okay to proceed with some anal play or anal sex, starting there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that.
So just want to give a little bit of information for anyone listening about what happens when you're triggered, right?
Yeah.
And so she references PTSD, and we won't get into like all the details of PTSD, but just some, in a snapshot of what that looks like. Your amygdala, which is the part of your brain responsible for that internal fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, is activated when you're in a dangerous, traumatizing situation like a sexual assault, right? So that amygdala fires up, releases a whole bunch of hormones in your body to prepare you for surviving that situation. And what can happen, and what happens with survivors, or if you are diagnosed with PTSD, is that something similar might happen, right? The most stereotypical example we think about is like a war veteran with PTSD. Here's a car backfire, and their body responds in a way as if it were gunshots. And so they duck for cover, or they have maybe a flashback, or they have a very physiological response of fear and terror, or they're frozen, or they're ready to fight in an instant. And it's a very knee-jerk reaction and an automatic response that happens. So surviving a sexual assault and then revisiting having some sort of anal stimulation with a partner that you do trust and you feel safe with can trigger that amygdala to fire up and can create a fear response. And those muscles in your anal sphincter are very tight and will likely clench if you are stressed or anxious or scared or feel any kind of pain. So we would expect a response like this that might happen for her. So let's say she is cleared by the doctors. She's doing okay. She is working with her therapist on managing the PTSD and understanding that. What do you think the first step could be for her in anal exploration?
Personally, the advice that I would give would be solo masturbation, including some light, gentle exploration. Just like baby step by yourself, right? So that there's no one in there. You have full control as like dipping your toes back in the water and slowly building that like safety and trust with pleasure and anal.
Right. Dr. Emily Morse, also known as Sex with Emily, in her book Smart Sex, she recommends 4 to 6 weeks of solo anal exploration before ever integrating anal play with a partner. And that's not even her suggestion for a survivor of trauma. That's just in general, like start solo. So although this woman has some experience, it sounds like she had some positive experiences with anal, but then of course these assaults. So, she does have some experience that she can maybe refer back to, but I think a reset, start solo, start slow, really slow, like just focus on the external stimulation, lots of lubrication. Your anus does not produce any self-lubrication. You have to use lube. It's like a non-negotiable. So lots of lubrication, just focus on the external. And probably after she's, what's the word I want to say? After she's had maybe what she considers more traditional stimulation first. So maybe she gives herself an orgasm so that there's a lot of blood flow. She's very relaxed, and then maybe starts to do some exploration. And then little by little, maybe at other solo sex sessions, she can integrate a little bit of maybe insertion with a finger or a small toy like a small butt plug, and really reacquaint herself with this in a safe, trusting environment, no distractions, plenty of time for her to just take her time. And if at any point she feels any pain, to stop and reel it back. The other thing I want to say is that it's not uncommon for women in a heterosexual relationship to feel like they should do anal to please their male partner. And I'm sensing maybe just a little bit of that from her. She's feeling really guilty and disappointed she can't perform for her partner. And he's like, it's okay. And she's maybe feeling the guilt around that. But she also does say she wants to revisit anal on her terms.
Yeah.
So really think about what those terms mean, right? Like really prioritize her pleasure. Make that the focus. Right. Don't tolerate any pain. Don't try to push through it. Don't try to like beat yourself up because, what's wrong with me? I used to be able to do this. Now I can't anymore. If it's on your terms, the terms should be your pleasure. And so if you're not there, that's okay. It doesn't mean you'll never get there, but really making it about your journey with your own relationship with yourself and participating in any kind of anal play, especially anal penetration, is a huge act of trust in a relationship. And I would think even more so if you've survived a sexual assault like what she's described. So trust takes time, and she has to kind of retrain her brain to like be okay and feel that it's safe, and that she can't do that if she's pushing through pain and is feeling guilty because she can't perform like she used to. She has to be very gentle and very kind to herself and go very slow to build that trust for herself in her own body and then with a partner.
And let's reframe perform. That's so black and white of like you're either successful or you're not. Like his pleasure isn't just penetration of the anus. There's a lot that can go into pleasure for him, right? That could be successful and performing, right? We don't have to make it so black and white to put all of this like tension and stress on her.
Yeah. And there's a lot to having healthy anal sex that we don't have time for in this video. If you would like us to do a video all about anal sex and being safe and healthy and how to go about it in the best way, let us know. we'd be happy to do that for you. There's a lot to it, so it really does need to be treated with care and intention and communication and collaboration and all of those things. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Consider subscribing to our channel. We would love to have you join our community. We do a lot of videos like this regularly where we react to Reddit posts and we give our insight and experience as sex therapists.